This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Brewers Outlet, and Purdy Insurance.
All right, welcome everyone back. Great to have you with us. Okay. This half hour being brought to you by our good friends at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket, imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and hot every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. And the pickle bar led by the barrels and the dills, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. All right, let's bring in Greg Pickel from Blue White Illustrated and On3.com. Welcome. Great to have you with us on the show, sir. Oops. Oh, sorry, I can't hear him right now. There he is. Hello, sir.
You got me now, Steve?
Yep, I got you now. How you
hope
doing?
You're doing well.
Hanging in there. Okay, so let's get to a couple things. Number one, your reaction on what Penn State did do this weekend, and then we'll get to moving forward in a moment.
Yeah, it's amazing to think there's still a game and 5 more to follow this trip to Iowa Penn State has this weekend, but certainly, as you well know, not to talk to the town at the moment. Yeah, I thought that it became almost obvious at the end of the Northwestern game, and maybe even after UCLA, that things were trending in this direction, Steve. And, of course, you never know when it's going to happen. It was obviously at a point where it certainly felt like it was going to happen at some point in time, whether that was as immediately as it did on Sunday or whether that was the end of the season. But, yeah, it's amazing. You know, again, I'll be the first or probably the last one to say it, but, 15 days ago, Penn State is on the doorstep of getting its first major win of the season against Oregon in double overtime. And now, less than 3 weeks later, James Franklin is obviously out as Penn State's coach after 11 and a half years. So it's shocking. There's no doubt about it. It's something that no one expected at the start of the year. I don't think there was anyone out there that thought it was a guarantee that Penn State was going to win the college football playoff, but I think a lot of people certainly felt like they had a good chance as anyone to at least get there and play for it. And then obviously, as we know, isn't going to be the case, and that's part of the reason why James Franklin's no longer at Penn State.
All right. I'll never forget James saying this last year, and they were talking about it wasn't Ohio State or Oregon or whomever. They talked about, like, whomever they were playing this week, and it's not really a big game. And he said, and he referenced Bowling Green. He says, he says, believe me, if you lose to Bowling Green because of a big game, well, the 2 losses to UCLA and Northwestern turned out to be big games and big losses.
Yeah, you're right, and he brought that up before. Same thing I think when he was being questioned about the non-conference schedule that Penn State put together this year back at Big Ten Media Days. He said something, I don't remember the exact quote, but to the effect of that, exactly, that, you don't think Villanova's a big game, for example, go lose to them and find out whether or not it's a big game. And certainly Northwestern and UCLA on paper, while not in the same breath of an FCS Villanova team, certainly fall into that category of games that were not supposed to be big ones for Penn State. They were supposed to be wins on the path to potentially playing for a Big Ten title and the college football playoff, and not games that turned into losses that could derail your chances to do either one of those things. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. That is a line that he used frequently over his time at Penn State when talking about whatever opponent it might be that, to your point, wasn't Ohio State, wasn't Oregon, wasn't a college football playoff team, etc. And certainly it came back to be true when you talk about those 2 losses.
All right. So I know that you'll get this is probably a better question probably for Ryan, but when you've at least talked around the office, when these things happen, people reopen their commitments, and that's what's happening here, and that's just a natural reaction.
Yeah, I think it's in the nature of fans probably to panic and say, oh, no, what's going to happen with this Penn State recruiting class. But, I don't want to say it doesn't matter at this point, but I think it's expected. I don't know how you could expect, you can obviously talk about kids committing to schools and how do you expect them to keep that commitment for 2 years or whatever it may be until they can actually sign. But when you talk about the guys that are going to sign pen to paper in December, and of course the guys in the class of 2027, of course they owe it to themselves and their families to reopen their recruitment, see what else is out there. If you have some guys, I always think of, the prototypical Penn State guy, like a Troy Reader, a Cooper Cousins, somebody like that, who are not going to decommit. They were going to Penn State, whether you coach Penn State, I coach Penn State, or James Franklin coached Penn State. So you might not lose everyone. But by and large, especially your top-ranked guys, Steve, they want to see what else is out there. And they have to because they don't know what coach is going to come here to Penn State next. They don't know what offense or defense is going to be at Penn State next. And there's no guarantee, of course, that any of the schools they go visit and talk to won't decide to make a similar choice somewhere down the road here. But at least for now, Penn State has, and that's going to lead these kids to go find out what else is out there while they wait to see who remains at Penn State and who comes to Penn State next.
Yeah, look, they have to take care of themselves, and I totally get that. And look, whomever they choose, they may just sit back and go, you know what, I'm going to stick there. Sometimes that happens too. So what does the presence of Terry Smith as the interim head coach, who has deep relationships with not only the current players but the group we just referenced for recruits, what can that at least mean in the meantime?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt matters. I think Terry Smith has a connection to so many people, both in the fan base, in the alumni group, in the Letterman group, in obviously current roster from offense and defensive guys. And so, he's a tremendous communicator. Anyone that watched his news conference yesterday at Beaver Stadium is aware of that, if they should be aware of that if they weren't already. But, I just think he can give the message that, Penn State is a place where they're going to attract a top coach and top coordinators on offense and defense, and that you want kids to believe in that and trust in that. But ultimately, these kids committed to the James Franklin experience, which Terry Smith has recruited as well as anybody in the country over the last 12 years, and that's no longer there. So what is Penn State to these guys at this point? They know what the school is. They know who the players on the roster are. But, you just have to wait and see who comes in here and how they go about doing things. And until then, to the point you made, the kids have to look out for themselves that are recruits and see what else is out there in case they don't like or maybe don't fit with whatever comes next for Penn State.
Right. And as you mentioned, they have more games to play. They still have a half the regular season to play at this point. Now we get to see Ethan Grunkemeyer. Before we talk about Ethan, what are your thoughts on the career of Drew Aller?
Yeah, it's a shame that it ends like this for a guy who was obviously extremely talented, came to Penn State and played for multiple offensive coordinators, and now sees his career end not only with a season that didn't go where he and the guys who came back to wanted it to go, but it doesn't end the way he wanted it to, period, on the field individually. He's going to be in some of the Penn State record books for a number of different things that would make you think his win-loss mark or what he wanted Penn State would have been better. Just a tremendous player and tremendous person. There's not really much else to say other than that. But he didn't win at the level maybe we thought he would as a recruit, or that Penn State thought it would get to with him at the helm. It's hard. You look back over his 3-year starting career, and what's the signature win you point to, or the massive upset you point to, the major win you point to? There's been some, of course, no doubt about it. And obviously Penn State won those 2 college football playoff games with him last year. But, I think a lot of his time at Penn State will be remembered for the ones that Penn State didn't get with him, including Notre Dame in the semifinal last year, including Oregon this year, and obviously matchups with Ohio State. So, but you can't knock the player. You can't knock the you can look back and see where the player could have done differently, but you certainly can't knock the person of Drew Aller. And it's just a shame that his career ends on a note like this that obviously will require him to get surgery and be away from his teammates for his final time at 6-7 weeks into his life.
Right, and the other part too is I think in some ways how he got hurt is emblematic of who he is. He got hurt trying to somehow fight for any extra yard he could get to try and keep his team's season alive. And I think, that's how he got hurt, and that's the kind of guy he is.
Yeah, you are 100% correct. And I think that is, there were a lot of instances, as you well know, Steve, where he was that guy for Penn State. And Penn State comes to games that maybe they did not have any business winning because he was always willing to fight for the extra yards, put his body on the line to do that. And, I go back to what Terry Smith said yesterday about, I think he was asked how things got to this point or where it went wrong the last couple of weeks. And, he said the ball bounced their way last year, and it certainly did. And some of that was what Drew Aller did on offense for Penn State to lead this team to victories that it didn't look like it was going to get in 2024. And part of that is just, the ball bounces your way sometimes, and it's not doing that right now for Penn State. And unfortunately, it didn't do that for Drew Aller last weekend either.
So now it is Ethan Grunkemeyer, and he's the one that gets out there and will play. So your thoughts, we've only had limited exposure in a game. Practice, obviously, you've watched. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I think the arm talent's there. We've seen that in his limited ability. He certainly can throw it far and certainly has some velocity behind it, so I think that we know that much. But in terms of what he's going to look like in this offense, in terms of what kind of connection he has with the receivers, in terms of what Andy Kolonicki can utilize game plan-wise based on the fact that he is, of course, not a third-year starter, which is where this offense was. With Drew Aller up until last weekend, it's just hard to project what you're going to see this offense do. You would obviously think they'll lean on the run game, and especially Katron Allen early at Iowa. It's certainly not a great place to be taking a first-time starting quarterback to. There's no doubt about that, even though Iowa may not be having the best season they could possibly have. That place will still be raucous, I'm sure, in a primetime environment on Peacock Saturday night, so you're going to have to deal with that and all the things that come with it. With the first-time starting quarterback. So I think you have to expect the worst if you're a Penn State fan and hope that between the running game and Grunkemeyer being new and somebody that, Iowa does not have a ton of film on, that they can move the ball a bit. And obviously this is a very good Iowa defense that's going to make it hard to move the ball a bit, but that's what Penn State will be tasked with. So, yeah, I wish I could be more specific to you, Steve, but I just think that we know the arm talent's there, and otherwise we're kind of all going to have to wait and see.
No, but that's my point, actually, Greg. My point is that he is somebody that a lot of people don't know a lot about. And you could be around the program every day, and there's certain things you can see, but there's only so many things you can see even in a practice. And now in the speed of a game, that's the part that's going to be a mystery. And I think your point about the running game, any first-time starter, whether you're in high school, college, or the pros, your running game needs to help that guy out. And that they're going to need that on Saturday night.
They absolutely are, and it starts with the offensive line, as Terry Smith mentioned on Monday. They need to be better up front. Both offense and defense need to be more physical. They need to be more willing to move guys to the point of attack on offense, and they need to be better about getting moved out of the way on defense. So when he talks about that running game specifically in the offensive line, that group has not played up to a standard that was set for it, mostly by itself going into the season, but also the outside world as well, based on what's back and based on what they have to rotate there and to work with. So certainly you're going to need the running back to help out Ethan Grunkemeyer. You're going to need the offensive line to do so too.
What did you think about, look, as somebody who's been around Terry for a long time, let's see, I've been around Terry 39 years. So I know that Terry's very direct. He does not sugarcoat things. Especially when you talk to him privately, he'll tell you yes, no, never, maybe. Okay? He talked about grit and toughness in the trenches yesterday. What was your thoughts when he brought that up?
Well, I think you just said it. It was blunt. It was direct. It was honest. And it's clear to see, I think, if you're watching, whether you're watching from our point of view in the press box, you and Jack on the other side of Beaver Stadium or whatever venue we might be at in the stadium as the fans or fans at home, you see this offensive line not getting enough push, not getting enough grit, I guess is the word he used, and the defensive line somewhat the same thing. And, listening to some of the players talk then today, Steve, it's they're talking about they got to have fun out there again. And there's been no fun. From my point of view, there's been very little fun on the field for this Penn State team this year. I don't know if it was the weight of the expectations. I don't know if there were issues internally locker room-wise. I'm not sure. But The swagger is another word Terry Smith used that Penn State's had in past seasons, has really never appeared at any point this year. Maybe a couple times during the non-conference slate, but there's certainly been something missing. And if Terry Smith, through being direct, through being honest and blunt, as the new leader of this program, can either conjure up some of that or replace some of that or get guys feeling that way, Penn State, of course, is going to be much better for it because, to your point, it's not like they have one game left and they fired the head coach or when Mike Yurcich got fired, they had, two games left, I think, and then a bowl game. You got a half a season to go. Yeah. And for the guys that want to go to the NFL, there's a lot of reps coming up that you're going to earn your future stock in terms of whether you're a day 1, day 2, day 3 kind of guy, players down the roster. You have a chance to prove to the new coach and coaches, depending on who comes back, what you're capable of and what your worth is to their roster. So it's not a throwaway. I know for many fans it's probably a throwaway because, I think Penn State was picked into projected by ESPN or into like the one of the Detroit Bowls on December 26th. In terms of the postseason outlook here, it's not very exciting. But in terms of this roster itself and the players on it and the coaches on it, everyone's coaching to set themselves up for next year and playing for that as well. So certainly it's one way they can do that, and the best way forward will be to get some of that toughness and grit and swagger back that Terry Smith said is lacking, and it clearly has been lacking.
Which then brings back, let's talk about the grit and toughness up front on defense. In the years that I've watched Jim Knowles, whether it was Ohio State or Oklahoma State, the front four getting pressure as 4 meant a lot, and he didn't want to blitz as often. What kind of factor has that played? Because the defense has not had a takeaway during this 3-game stretch.
No, and if you look back at Ohio State's stats during his time there, or his Oklahoma State stats, you're right. I mean, it was not necessarily a defense designed on blitzing a lot, but takeaways were mostly a part of the equation. Not always; they can be a little bit random anyway. But I think part of that, Steve, is that teams are not testing, or what I've recently, I guess, have tested the Penn State secondary and had great success. But earlier in the year, they were certainly avoiding throwing at those guys. And Penn State's not been able to really strip the ball loose in too many scenarios or get a helmet on the ball and knock it out, things like that. There's been a couple instances, but not a ton. But I think that, this defense has certainly not been what everyone thought it would be. And I realized that the loss of Tony Rojas was probably understated going into UCLA week. And certainly now you look back and say, wow, you didn't realize how much of the things he was holding together for a position group that went into the season with questions in terms of depth at linebacker. But, I think that, that what Jim Knowles and this defense, whatever they can do at this point is to get these guys to play fast and not think. Because it almost just looks like everyone's guessing out there. And I'm sure Jack Ham obviously has much more tremendous perspective on this during the broadcast. But, it just looks like guys are thinking a lot. Guys are guessing a lot. They're just not sure. I heard Don DeLuca say again this morning the exact same thing I heard him say after the Rose Bowl about guys needing to ask more questions and prepare better and so on and so forth. And it just becomes a question of at what point is it going to, what's it going to take for guys to get to a point where they're prepared, where they're not asking questions, where they're not thinking and just playing. And, if they don't ever get to that point, then obviously Penn State as a defense is going to continue to struggle the way it has. So I don't know if it's simplifying it. I don't know if it's just being tougher, but certainly something needs to take place for this defense to get going in a different direction.
Everybody knows, listens to the broadcast. People don't think I think at all. So, I mean, that's, so I understand that. But they're also going to face an Iowa team that plays like an Iowa team. I mean, that's one thing about this. There's really no mystery about who they're facing on Saturday night. Iowa does what Iowa does, and they don't really change. So in terms of the ability to get ready for what they do, everybody pretty much knows what they do.
Right, and so you do have that working in your favor if you're Penn State, because you're right, there is no secret. There is no surprise or shock or anything like that about what this Iowa team is going to do. They're not going to score a heck of a lot of points on offense. I know they scored 37 last week. They're going to try and run the ball, which recently has been a good way to attack this Penn State defense, so that'll be helpful. They're going to hope their quarterback does not take the ball out of their hands via turnovers, and they have a stingy, very talented defense that's going to throw everything and the kitchen sink at Ethan Grunkemeyer. So, yeah,
Yes.
it's not an encouraging trip for Penn State to be making just from a matchup perspective, but to the point you're making, Steve, at least they know what the matchup is, right? This is not an Ohio State team that can do all kinds of different things, or an Oregon team that can do all kinds of different things, or whatever team you might be thinking of with a big-time offense and it does all sorts of tricks and things like that. This is an Iowa team that I think, other than the players and the numbers changing, that the names of the players, it pretty much is the same team, same program it's been for the majority of the Kirk Ferentz era. So, yeah, that is a positive. You certainly know what you're getting. It's just that not the greatest of times for Penn State to be getting it, I don't think, especially on the road.
One quick note, I want to ask you just quickly about wrestling, where they stand right now heading into the season. Anything that people should know about on the wrestling front?
Yeah, obviously Penn State going to get going here at the U23 World Championship next week, and then it's on to the regular season, the college portion of the wrestling schedule for the Penn State team this year. So they certainly come back as the number one team in the country as they look for another national title. There'll be some lineup changes, of course. We'll wait and see what Penn State wants to do at 133 pounds, 141 pounds, and 157 pounds. Otherwise, things look pretty much set. You have most of your 10 All-Americans from a year ago returning. And certainly this is going to be an exciting team that Cale Sanderson puts on the map that will again have a chance to set records at the NCAA tournament in the middle of next year. But, yeah, at the time being, Steve, kind of status quo. They got some lineup things to figure out, like I said, at 133, 141, and 157. And otherwise, things are on track to return to the heights they've been at for a number of years now under Cale Sanderson.
Greg, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Steve. Talk to you soon. Have a safe trip out to Iowa.
Yep, Greg Pickel does outstanding work on 3.com. Blue White Illustrated. Half hour brought to you by our good friends at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drink, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. And ready-to-drink cocktails. High Noon, Jack Daniel's Crown Royal, Pickle Bar, led by my two favorites, the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is, because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the Pickle Bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
I had to laugh when we started the previous half hour. You may have heard a couple bangs when we started. So at 2 o'clock, I go out to get the mail, and I had ordered some laminating sheets because I always laminate my charts because if you have bad weather, it rains, it's no big deal or whatever. So I always do it. So I get a box of 200 of them. I bring them down here to the studio. We're about to start the 2, and it slips out of my hands and it falls. Like, oh, no, that just sounds great. So I have my iPad on the left, and that's where I dropped them, and it missed the iPad, fortunately. So I picked it up to move it to the right, and it fell out of my hands again. I was like, okay, great. Oh, well, America's most graceful host. All right. We now bring in the outstanding Neal Coolong, who will save all segments, whether I'm dropping things or not. Welcome, sir. Great to have you with us.
As always, it's great to be here, but that just reminds me, I remember a segment we did years ago. I was in a room away from the group of people that were at my house, and somebody walked in the room in the middle of the segment, apparently was not happy that the room was occupied. And this is the bathroom. This is like the laundry room. They slammed the door.
I remember.
I stopped mid-sentence. I was just like, oh, my God. I don't even know how I recovered. I'm sure it wasn't graceful at all. But it was like, okay, let's not slam doors anymore. But, yes, as always, great to be here and a nice trip down memory lane.
Yeah, like I said, I had a stack of mail like I just brought in. And as it slipped out of my hands, it goes slam. Right? I'm like, well, I don't want it there, so I pick it up, and when I went to move it over, boom, I slammed it on the other side. I'm like, God, what the heck am I doing here? Neal,
like a Monty Python bit at that point.
I know. It's exactly right. I felt like I was in the middle of doing my own Monty Python skit. What the heck? And the audience is like, what's he slamming around about? I'm not. I swear to you. I'm just clumsy. Okay? I'm just clumsy. So, when the season began, it was a division that had Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, waiting in the wings Deshaun Watson with Joe Flacco starting, and the last standing member is Aaron Rodgers. Who would have thought that would have happened?
The remarkable thing is, it's really just kind of the perfect storm for all of those teams, and I feel like, ironically, that would be the one thing the Steelers could handle if it happened. I mean, not that Aaron Rodgers is not playing well. I feel like he is, but the quarterback's snap-to-snap production is not the reason why the team is having success. Clearly, that's the case in Cincinnati. It's a pretty strong case in Baltimore, and it's, the absence of anything resembling a quarterback in Cleveland is probably the root of their problems. But Pittsburgh has made themselves, in a way, quarterback recession-proof, just because it's not the focal point of their team. And I think teams or fans have been clamoring about the lack of what they perceive to be high-level quarterback play in Pittsburgh for a long time. Yet this season, they're one win away from a badly faltering Bengals team from taking a 4-game lead over the team that was largely favored to win the division at the beginning of the year. And it would be week 7 in that case. It's just a strange set of circumstances. But really, Pittsburgh, they prepared themselves the best as far as the overall depth of their roster. The construction of their team is not heavily dependent upon one person. Now, you can take the pessimistic view and say it's because none of them are all that incredibly astounding, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case. It's just they can handle the injuries that they've taken on. Other teams clearly have not been able to do that at this point. I don't think there would be nearly as big a drop-off from Aaron Rodgers to Mason Rudolph as there has been from any of the other starting quarterbacks to what they're on their third guy now in Baltimore and Cincinnati. So a benefit for the Steelers at this point, and one that I don't think anybody saw coming.
Yeah. Arthur Smith has been able to look at Aaron Rodgers. Do you feel like he's been able to marry what Rodgers is capable of doing at this stage of his career with the offense that they're running?
Yeah, I think really it's more Arthur Smith saw mission number one to ensure continuity along their offensive line, to build that experience and to build protection that they can rely on. And if we want to look at it this way, what we saw in Pittsburgh's win over Cleveland was a master stroke of offensive planning. I am not somebody that gets into the idea that complexity equals better. What I know is they had to, it was not an option, they had to find a way to schematically throw Myles Garrett off of the sense that he's usually on when he's destroying them every third play of every game that they play. Along with that, you saw that the superstar went down. It was not picked up. That pace was not picked up by the rest of the front seven, and their defense was not nearly as powerful as it has been in games against Pittsburgh. It was almost entirely scheme-based, too. They did a lot of different things, mixing up looks, mixing up tendencies, and Garrett didn't have a chance really to get footing and get going. when you have an offensive line that can do different things like that, they can throw an off-speed pitch at you to complement the fastball, you're going to have more success as a passer because protection is going to come better, and it's not simply going to be reliant upon winning every one-on-one matchup all the time, which, to be honest, and I know Steelers fans don't like to agree with this, but Myles Garrett's not going to get beat one-on-one very often. So you really have to come up with a team-wide effort to slow down the one guy and with it see everything else fall. I was very impressed with that overall from the Steelers offense. I thought while the results might not speak to this exactly, but that was one of the best offensive performances they've had in a long time, simply because they were able to mitigate the primary threat of the opponent and with that make the plays that they need to make in a lot of the situations that they need to make. It wasn't perfect, but they have to be encouraged with the idea that they now have this foundation pretty well built. It's not going to be, upward forever, but they've done a great job building that offensive line. And we started to see Rodgers taking some shots down the field. We started to see him get out on the move a little bit. I feel like they've expanded his options on a play as they felt more confident with their protection, with their scheme. They're really kind of getting everything down now. And with that, I think we will see more from Rodgers. We will see more certainly if and when Calvin Austin comes back, more deeper stuff down the field, and that's going to open up everything else. I feel overall, to borrow a Tomlinism, the arrow is pointed up offensively, and I don't know if I felt confident that was going to happen just after 5 games where they are now, but it looks good. I say that now, and I'm certainly possible next Tuesday at this time we're talking about a totally different team, but there are good things that we can focus on right now that they can continue to build on in a very beneficial season to this point. I think they have a lot of good things ahead of them right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, defensively, look, they're facing right now the game's too fast for Dylan Gabriel. I think that's fair to say. Plus, he didn't get any help on the right side of his offensive line, which is a left-handed quarterback he needed, and that's where the injuries are in the Cleveland. But what kind of difference has the acumen and the athleticism of Jalen Ramsey meant to that defense, not just as a guy that's out in space, but a guy that also has the ability to blitz?
I think with what you have with Ramsey, obviously he comes with a Hall of Fame resume. Lot of hype surrounding him as a player. What they're really doing with him is not very different than what they usually do with that nickel back, that slot back, if they have the physical ability to do it. They like him rushing the passer. They like bringing that extra guy off the edge and being able to pick it up underneath. Ramsey is just kind of like the superstar version of Mike Hilton from a couple of years ago. Mike Hilton was a very good player in Pittsburgh. I think he's on somebody's practice squad right now. But for an undrafted guy whose career was kind of railroaded before he got to Pittsburgh, he's done a remarkable job over the time that he's in there. And Ramsey, I don't think anybody would argue, is clearly the physically more talented player.
Yes.
But the role that he's being asked to play is very similar to that. And I think good Steelers defenses have recently had that additional spark to it. It's not to say that T.J. Watt, his numbers are not on par with where he usually is. He's still very effective. I think we're seeing certainly a contract push by Nick Herbig. He's going to get paid the pace that he's on right now. You're getting Alex Highsmith back. They have these pretty strong threats coming off of the edge. When you set up, though, your inside, we saw Patrick Queen blitz with some success. And then off of the backside of the edge with a big body, a good athlete like Ramsey, you can really confuse a player. Now, I understand Dylan Gabriel for his faults, for his shortcomings. They were not going to probably be able to protect him as well as they would have liked. But there was twice that Ramsey came off the edge. Gabriel looked at it, had no idea what was going on. We want to break everything down to experience and drops when it comes to a quarterback. Quarterback gets let off the hook no faster in any other capacity in football than when a receiver drops the ball. All of a sudden, all other sins are forgiven. Dylan Gabriel is not an NFL starter, and I don't need to be Kevin Stefanski to say that. There are other things going on inside that organization I'll get into another time, not reporting it, but there's no way they're trying right now. Gabriel is not prepared. They can't put together a game plan to seriously compete in a game with Dylan Gabriel. It's not going to happen unless their defense balls out, which they didn't do on Sunday. So his processing is way too slow, and when you mix it up the way the Steelers did, they kept him off balance. He held on to the ball in a couple situations. It's like, dude, you got to get rid of that. It doesn't matter where that goes. You need to get it out of your hands because you're going to get hit with the ball. That's a bad thing. You get hit otherwise, you're tough, you're gritty. But the second guys start dropping 5-yard passes as if that's the difference of the game, he gets let off the hook for all of it. I thought he was really poor. If Cleveland's going to continue to put him out there, I'm not convinced that they're serious about competing this season.
And sitting there is Shedeur Sanders. The world anxious.
There's the big question: do you invite that? Do you open it up? And I think my 2 cents. I think that's at this point now. If you felt Joe Flacco was poor enough that you needed to make a move, and it wasn't going to be Sanders, in my opinion, you can't evaluate Dylan Gabriel after 2 games and act like this is a good situation. He's getting better. He's improving. I'll give it this. I mean, playing the Vikings and the Steelers back-to-back is baptism by fire, especially you lost Conklin 12 snaps into the game against Pittsburgh. That's not going to help. The reality is, though, if that's the case, you've got to get more out of your guy, and I would wonder why then Flacco got benched. It's not as if Flacco didn't have those concerns. So it seems to me like they're kind of looking to set this up the whole time, but I don't think Sanders is going to get the guy because I don't think that Shedeur Sanders was the guy that either Andrew Berry or Kevin Stefanski wanted to draft. I think that was a call made by the quarterback whisperer in Cleveland, the same guy that made the call on Deshaun Watson. Yeah. So they're in a tough spot. And like we talked about last week, I think they're really just trying to figure out what they want to do with Watson, how that's all going to play out. In the meantime, they're really evaluating for a backup quarterback. I think their quarterback is for next year is in college right now, and they're going to see who's still standing at the end of the season if anybody's going to be left. But Gabriel, I can't imagine is grading out a whole lot better than what they think Sanders could do if Sanders was in there. It's not a question of mobility; it's a question of getting rid of the ball, trying to make a throw down the field. And Gabriel just doesn't do that. He hangs on to it too long, and their pop gun offense is not going to help anything. You have 47 attempts for 180 yards. I mean, you're not doing anything with that, especially when you lose the game by 3 scores.
One final one. The Steelers thought they were going to be getting ready for Joe Flacco for the Cleveland game. Instead, they're getting ready for him with the Cincinnati game. Actually, I thought he gave a pretty good account of himself at Green Bay over the weekend.
Yeah, I thought Flacco. They started off cold, which I think you could expect, considering weird situation. You just acquired your starting quarterback via trade a couple days before the game. That doesn't happen very often. It's kind of a different thing. First couple drives, they look out of sync by a lot. But I will say this: you need to credit the Bengals in the second half. They put together back-to-back quality drives. And, Green Bay is not a bad football team by any stretch. It's a really tough game to throw the new quarterback into with the new offense. But they did some things they can build on, and I think it can be dangerous. The Bengals, with Rodgers under center, know the Steelers far better than the Steelers know the Bengals with Flacco under center. That can be an asset in a short week, especially when you're the one playing at home. So I don't think the Steelers have anything to look past here. It's a hungry Bengals team with superstars on their offense outside of the quarterback. All they need is a play or two, and as we saw, let's say the game was more competitive in Pittsburgh. Cleveland makes one more play in that game. We're complaining about the field condition at Heinz Field or Acrisure Stadium even more than we already are. Right. One little slip up, one thing here and there can swing games in which they're otherwise kind of tightly contested. Teams that aren't really throwing haymakers, more jabs, and trying to land more punches. That kind of fight can go either way. That tends to be how division games are played. So I think they saw some good things with Flacco, the way that they ended the game. They had to feel somewhat encouraged considering the situation that they're in. I think they could probably open it up a bit more, even on a short week. They can use that momentum going into a familiar opponent who's not as familiar with them.
My friend, always a pleasure. Appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, back to wrap it up in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Scared of new car prices? Then you haven't been to Sunbury Motors Kia. Sunbury Motors Kia takes the scariness out of new car shopping. Take as much as $5,000 off on a 2025 Kia Sorento EX all-wheel drive. Or choose $2,000 off and 0% financing for 48 months or 0.99% APR for 60 months. Sorento start at just under $35,000. Take up to $2,000 in discounts on the 2025 Kia Niro with hybrid models that get up to 54 mpg and don't even require a charging cable. Drive away in a 2025 Kia Niro EV wins for just $278 a month for a 2-year, 10,000-mile lease with zero. You heard right, zero out of pocket. Plus, during the month of October, Sunbury Motors Kia will be donating $25 per new vehicle to the PA Breast Cancer Coalition. Sunbury Motors Kia on the Strip in Hummel's Wharf. For details, see dealer or go to kia.com.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Okay, Audra Snyder's going to join us on the show tomorrow. We'll get her perspective on what's going on. Kickoff, by the way, is 7 o'clock Eastern Time on Saturday, where I'm beginning at 5:30. And, yes, there will be a coach's show this week. There's no quarterback club this week, but there is a coach's show this week. Quarterback club, in all likelihood, is going to return on Wednesday, the 29th of October. Do I have the... like 2-week time? Yeah, it sounds right. He'll return then. But the coach's show rolls on, and Terry Smith will be on the show on Thursday night. Okay? All happy there? Haven't heard from the studio all day. You all good? No answer. They must be angry. Today's show, this half hour, brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.